Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from Jon and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads, and if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show, and if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Here we are, everybody, with another edition of Rewind-A-Dynamite. Jon Pollock with Wai Ting, coming off of the follow-up Dynamite to All in London. How are you tonight, Wai?
Doing pretty well. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Splendid.
Splendid. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Terrific.
That's
Great.
good to hear. I believe
Lovely.
it. I'm convinced.
Wai, do you have an opinion about the reunion of Oasis?
I
Did
guess
they cross your fandom in the mid-90s, or?
Absolutely. Yeah, loved Oasis. To be honest, I wasn't. I guess I had always assumed they were broken up and then getting back together like throughout the past 20 years anyway. I didn't realize it had been 15 years since they got back together last. So I don't know. When they announced it, I guess I was like, oh, they were broken up. I guess it was, it's like a perpetual on again, off again till the end of time. So it's just another chapter, I guess.
It's really heartwarming when two brothers can bury a grudge for the sake of like the most in-demand concert tickets that will be known to mankind in the next
Oh, it's
year.
a great marketing gimmick. I think you and I should stop this podcast for about 15 years and then try to milk the reunion.
I always tell you we should fight a lot more and publicize it.
So what were they? Was there like an actual issue that we know about?
I can't call myself a super fan of Oasis. I'm sure more educated people can talk to me about the beef. I doubt I will be that captivated by it, but I was just a fan of the group. I would love to see them, but I know these tickets will, like, even if they had a Canadian tour date, like what would be your ceiling for a group that you wanted to see? Not necessarily Oasis, but like what would be your ceiling for a concert, like your ultimate show of like an artist that you would go above and beyond payment wise for?
Okay.
Like that you would pay for like 3 hours of music for.
Yeah. I mean, I've paid like 200, like maybe 250 even for like a ticket before. So probably about that. If I really wanted to see somebody.
If someone told me they had like a ticket to Oasis, for instance,
yeah.
I think I'd go that level to see them.
Really? Okay. All
I
right.
don't feel that would be. I don't feel that's probably going to. I don't know.
You could probably get in for 200 to see Oasis.
I guess it depends. There are no Canadian dates as of now. It's rumored, but I mean, these tickets in the UK. I guess the tickets go on sale this week. I wonder if WrestleTix is going to follow these Oasis. They should.
I feel like don't you think there's already a WrestleTix for concerts?
Well,
Concert
Oasis
tickets?
Tix. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone goes, hope you have a great time. Let us know
Yeah.
how much it costs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tonight we are talking about Dynamite. Do you know what the WrestleTix number was for Dynamite by the end?
No, tell me. What is it?
Well, about 10 days ago, they were around 1,000, and they got all the way up to 2,000 for this show in a venue that can hold over 15,000.
Okay.
And thus
All right.
we got, I don't even want to be like negative against the crowd. This just sounded like these were 2,000 people in a 15,000 seat venue. And I thought this show, there was a ton of great stuff on this show, but there was just so little heat for so much stuff on this show that I just thought like the atmosphere was like for all the stuff that you can run up and down this show. I mean, it took a lot to get meaningful responses to this show. Like this was the antithesis of last week.
I guess it only jumped out to me for certain segments. Like the rest kind of felt somewhat standard to me. But yeah, now that you mentioned it, I guess there weren't really like any giant peaks throughout the show either.
Well, before we get into all of that, I want to alert people that if you want to get in your questions before we do our Ask Away mailbag show, that show is coming out on Thursday. For all members at postwrestlingcafe.com, you have until Thursday morning to submit your questions at forum.postwrestling.com. Go find the Ask Away question thread. You can submit it there or send us a voice memo.fm/postwrestling, and you can just record a question, send it in to us. It's free to submit, and we'll get to your question on Thursday's show. It has been a while since we have done a mailbag show.
I didn't realize it's been like 2 months.
It hasn't been that long. Well, I looked at the mail. There are a lot of questions we have to get through. And
forget Oasis. This is the Ask Away reunion, okay? That we've been. I mean, I know it's probably felt like 15 years for many of you.
Well, I don't have a particular song title to make a pun off of, but join us for the Ask Away mailbag show on Thursday. Then on Friday, me and Wai will be back with Rewind to SmackDown on Friday evening. Saturday, we've got Collision Course coming your way. And then Sunday night, it will be Braden Harrington and Andrew Thompson covering NXT No Mercy. That's happening in Denver, Colorado. So make your plans for the weekend and structure them around all the wrestling that is going on. And we'll go over some of the shows this weekend. Friday night alone, we have a New Japan show, a TNA show, SmackDown, and if you want to throw in Rampage, that's happening as well, which looks like an interesting Rampage as well, just based on some of the matches that they announced tonight.
Yeah, I was feeling like there's a real lack of wrestling on weekends. So, all right, good.
Could you imagine having All Out this Sunday as it was originally scheduled? Like, I would just not be ready for All Out this weekend.
Well, I wonder if a lot of the other events would have moved.
I'm just saying, like, coming off of like obviously it happened last year. I do like, if we're gonna do quick pay-per-views in succession, I think it's okay to have one weekend as a buffer in there.
Sure.
Sid, we got some more news. His son released some additional information regarding what Sid had been dealing with over the last 8 years. He noted that his father had been diagnosed with congestive heart failure in 2016 and atrial fibrillation around the same time. He was also given a pacemaker. Then in April of 2021, that's when he was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which he says was linked to Roundup weed killer. Although he never told anyone about his fight against cancer, Sid lived his life to the fullest, attending the gym, boxing classes, making appearances for his fans, and of course, t-ball games for the kids. He passed away peacefully in his bed, leaving behind a legacy of strength and determination. He goes on to thank all the thousands of messages that his family has received and noted that there's going to be a public visitation this Saturday in West Memphis, Arkansas, with a funeral to follow on Saturday. So that's the latest. But, he kept this very, very quiet. 8 years of, just different battles that he had between heart issues and then cancer in 2021 that he had been dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of tributes, of course, coming in, and a lot of like memories from fans about his wrestling career. But this was a grandparent, so a loving grandparent from what it sounds like, somebody who was really there, and probably really enjoyed his life outside of wrestling. So that is makes all of this that much more heartbreaking. 63 is pretty young.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, after. He mentions it was in 2016 that he had the atrial fibrillation and got a pacemaker. He did wrestle a match after that in 2017 as well, which, I mean, when you're talking about like the independent level, I mean, that's, something that's not necessarily going to be screened in advance, but that is something as well. So anyway, does have a funeral coming up this Saturday, and I'm going to hopefully have another story on Sid in the next day or two that I've been working on. It's crazy when you go through this guy's career and some of the stories he was attached to, and the softball is a part of it, but so is, like, man, just when you think about how this guy just went back and forth to all these companies and always in top spots and finding himself in positions where you would just think, like, a promoter would not take a chance on Sid. It's very indicative of the mindset in the 90s for this guy that, I mean, they just would look at this guy and he'd jump off the page, and there was always a promoter that was ready to put him in, even if, there was the concern if this guy wouldn't fulfill the end of a contract, if he would walk out, if there would be problems along the way. He would have his injuries on top of that. And, he was like, no one is, I know this week there's been like heavy praise upon Sid. Like, this guy was never a great wrestler, and I don't think anyone is going to argue otherwise. But it does tell you that.
But that's not the big sort of be all end all of the promoters, at least. They weren't looking for necessarily great matches. They were looking for presence and star power and just an intimidating figure that they could put up their big baby face against, and he provided that.
So hopefully we'll have more of that coming out this week on the site. Sports Business Journal had a story. They reported out the upcoming changes to the WWE broadcast team. So we do have the new Raw team in place. It will be Joe Tessitore, joined by Wade Barrett, beginning this Monday in Denver, and Michael Cole and Corey Graves on SmackDown, and adding that once they launch on Netflix, Michael Cole will go back to Mondays with Pat McAfee after the college football season, which is, you would state, of all their broadcasters, Pat McAfee is going to be the most the largest celebrity that you have under your broadcast ranks, and going with Cole and Pat McAfee, who they must view as like the A-team pairing. But we'll get the new Joe Tessitore, Wade Barrett team up on Monday, and I guess for Corey Graves, like, reverting to a strict like color position with Michael Cole on SmackDown as they move to the USA Network.
So what does that mean for Tessitore when McAfee comes back?
Well, I mean, his college football commitments will be up by then. It's the same thing. Like, McAfee is not around during college football season. Tessitore works like weekends doing college football and college sports. Maybe by the time come January, then he moves to SmackDown. It sounds like it's going to be just
musical chairs.
That's what it's going to be when you're dealing with, people like Tessitore and Pat McAfee, who are not exclusive to WWE. If you want to have these people, you have to work around their schedules.
They must be pretty confident in this Joe Tessitore to have him be the lead play-by-play guy on Raw. Taking your two most experienced guys in Graves and Cole and putting those two on SmackDown. Barrett at this point is very experienced as well, but Tessitore is going to be leading the show in many ways as the play-by-play. So I'm excited to hear him.
Yeah, I think that's going to be maybe the biggest focus on Monday for people's to hear how well he does. Also, we have NXT ratings from Tuesday night, not too dissimilar from the previous week. They did 615,000 viewers and a 0.17 in the demo. This was a taped show from last week, and they were down from 639,000 and up from last week's demo of 0.16. Our latest example of a tape show. I imagine many people watched this show and didn't even know it was taped, where it was our go-home show going into No Mercy. And Canada doing 72,400 viewers on Rogers Sportsnet. Friday, we have SmackDown and Rampage, as we mentioned, also going on that night. First is TNA Emergence from Louisville, Kentucky, which they have announced they have sold out the venue. This will be headlined by a 60-minute Iron Man match between Nick Nemeth and Josh Alexander for the TNA title after they went 30 minutes on television to a draw. In a 6-person Ultimate X match, Speedball Mike Bailey defends the title against Laredo Kid, Hammerstone, Riley Osborne from NXT, Jason Hotch, and Zachary Wentz, who, I don't know if you got to see the Rascals segment on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. I thought Zachary Wentz, that was the best promo of his career. Like, he in particular, I thought was like really good.
Well, it's arguably the best story that he's had. Certainly compared to anything else he's had on NXT, and they semi-reference like the exit and stuff. Like, I made a mistake, and they didn't outright state what it was, but they weren't shying away or being. They were being semi-vague, I guess. Yeah, I don't know what sort of like promise at this point they've been given. Like somebody like a Zach Wentz, who, as far as we know, is not signed, is still signed to TNA. I don't know what sort of promise they've given him, but like, I can understand all of these guys taking these particular opportunities as their
tryouts,
their auditions. On the greatest scale. This is his chance at actually coming back and actually getting a spot.
Yeah, I just thought like I found Wes Lee. He was fine. He has not, to me, gelled as a heel yet. I think he's really trying to find, like, Zachary Wentz just laid out and I guess maybe you want this in the babyface to make out like such a compelling case about, I was helping you every day in the hospital when you couldn't walk from your back injury. And Wesley's like, yeah, but I'm on another level than you. Like, is it?
It is pretty amusing to me how hard they're hitting. Like, I'm a WWE superstar. All you are is a TNA wrestler.
Yeah.
Like, I do find that very fascinating. Especially because I think Wesley is just going to win this feud. So, they've been very kind to TNA, I have to say, throughout this entire relationship. But like lines like that do make me like wonder, well, how exactly is this supposed to make TNA feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those that we have spoken about. I think this is great for these performers, the ones that are coming out, and people like the audience is reacting like to a Rosemary, to obviously a Zach Wentz, like all of these TNA talents. The biggest example being Joe Hendry. Is this great for TNA? Like, are any of these people so interested in these characters that they're following TNA when they weren't prior?
Well, I think Emergence is a good example of it. Like we don't necessarily know numbers or anything, but like, can we tell
the last pay-per-view, the Slammiversary show, there was a bit of a bump from the April show, which had lowered. So I mean, you would have to at least look at that as something. Basically, like the NXT stuff has been the most prominent for TNA at the moment.
Right. Okay.
So also on the card, PCO takes on Matt Cardona, Jordan Grace and Spitfire against Alicia Edwards, Masha Slamovich, and Ash by Elegance. The Hardys team with Joe Hendry and Mike Santana against Moose, Brian Myers, Eddie Edwards, and JDC. Steve Macklin takes on Eric Young, and on the pre-show, Frankie Kazarian versus Kushida. So both Joe Hendry and Zachary Wentz are doing this pay-per-view and maybe the tapings on Saturday and then go Sunday to do No Mercy in Denver. Also Friday night is Capital Collision, which is an example of, I think, a great card, and we will see how much attention is on this show. I think they have about 1,900 tickets out for this show in Washington, D.C., and fortunately, WWE just ran this market last Friday for SmackDown. But this card, which amazingly, we did get a mention of the main event on tonight's Dynamite through Mark Quinn.
Yes, we did.
With Mercedes Moné defending the strong women's title against Momo Watanabe. Gabe Kidd versus Leo Rush for the strong openweight title. So we are going to have Leo Rush on the Capital Collision show as his match. It could be picture-in-picture with his match on Rampage airing. He's in that four-way they announced tonight.
Yeah, well, he moves very fast, so
he's going to have to rush.
Yeah.
Mustafa Ali against Hiromu Takahashi. Mikey Nichols and Shane Hayes defend the openweight tag titles against Hechicero and Virus from CMLL. Tetsuya Naito in a non-title match with TJP. I don't know why Naito's in just this nothing match on this card. They're just, let's send this guy across the world. I guess this is
he's like, I guess he's a big legitimate New Japan name. And
it's not a title match. It's not like anything prominent. It's not anything storyline related. It's just a match.
And the man's knees, I feel, only have so many more, matches, much less like 12-hour flights to give. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how long this match goes. I don't anticipate it being.
This is going to be T-shirt Naito, 7 minutes,
perhaps. Yeah.
Zack Sabre Jr. against Teton. That should be a lot of fun. David Finlay, Clark Connors, and Drilla Maloney against Kevin Knight, Rocky Romero, and Yoshihashi. And then Tanahashi and Tomohiro Ishii will take on GYV and Robbie Eagles and Bad Dude Tito. GYV also on Rampage, so we're going to have a lot of confusion here. And then 2 pre-show matches as well on this show. I really like this card. I hope I can find some time to watch it over the weekend, but that's coming up Friday. We'll have coverage on the site. Andrew Thompson is covering Capital Collision, John Cena on top of Emergence. So you know what? You can't watch all this stuff, so just keep refreshing postwrestling.com.
Oh, and both those two guys doing podcasts on the weekend too. So, man, working really
And John
hard.
Kleinchester is covering SmackDown and Rampage. So folks, we've got the big guns out on Friday and this whole weekend. We're going to have Bash in Berlin coverage, No Mercy coverage. Way and Neil Flanagan, our European correspondent, will be up on Saturday right after Bash in Berlin.
Yeah, it's going to be busy.
Boy. So there you go. All of that coming up this weekend. So there you have all your news and notes. Wai, is there anything else you want to touch upon before we head to Champaign, Illinois?
Hey, I want to promote some stuff that's on the Post Wrestling Cafe feed right now, including something that just dropped that I think everybody will love. It is our latest edition of MCU Hayter, Rich Fan, WH Park, and the Podfather himself, Nate Milton, joining them. I mean, if you love WH and Rich already, like anytime Nate Milton is on, Nate Milton I consider like sort of like the booster, the amplifier. Anything you already love about a podcast, if you throw a little Nate Milton on it, it's like times 5. That much better, and that is of course the case here with MCU Hayter, reviewing perhaps the worst X-Men movie that exists. Yes, even worse than the New Mutants. A 22% critics score, I should say, on Rotten Tomatoes, the lowest of them all. X-Men Dark Phoenix, but twist here, okay? One of these 3 actually liked this movie, and you won't believe who it is.
One of the 3, really?
One of the 3. Oh,
okay,
yeah.
we'll tune in to find out. Also today, Neil Flanagan was on with myself and Brandon Thurston, going over his in-person experience covering AEW All in London. He also wrote a piece, a great piece on the site that you can check out. But Neil's on the show today, and Brandon gives us the whole backstory of his 1.5-year struggle to get the records from the city of San Antonio related to the Royal Rumble 2023. Those PDFs arrived last Friday. Brandon Thurston prevailing over the entire state of Texas through the assistance of Attorney General Ken Paxton.
He finished the story.
He did. He finished the story, and then he wrote the story, available at WrestleNomics.com. Final thing I want to mention, okay? So tonight, I ordered pizza for my family, and it came, and I pay for it at the door, and I'm using the debit machine to pay for it. And I order online, and it gives me the breakdown. Okay, so I ordered like 2 pizzas, and then there's a service fee of like $5. It's like, okay, whatever fee. Then the person arrives, and I get the machine, and it gives me the option to give a tip. And I always leave a tip, so I type in the tip. The tip goes through. So now I've put a service fee in, I've put in the tip, and then the next one was the $1.50 was charged for using the debit machine.
Right.
I've never had this before. I was like,
oh,
so how many fees did I just fork over just to get this pizza? I think I could have gotten a whole 3rd pizza if I had so chosen, but I had never before gotten a $1.50 charge just for using the machine to pay through debit.
I think I've had like credit card fees attached to it, but like
it was called like a console fee for the actual physical machine to use.
Right.
It's like, what if I said no? Like, what? Do you have an alternative option that I don't want to pay for the $1.50? I don't want to use your machine. You got to figure out how to.
Well, could you have paid cash?
I didn't have cash on me. I don't handle in cash anymore. So I guess I need to go back to cash.
Yeah.
It's the principle of this matter. It's like, you have this debit machine. It costs you nothing to bring this machine out and get money out of me.
But are there fees attached to like the, I don't know, usage of the signal? Like, dude, it's hard to argue these things because you don't know what is standard practice for that particular establishment, for, I don't know, various establishments.
Listen,
I feel like I've just been charged fees and I just didn't really even look close enough.
I think it should all just be bundled into one big fee when you buy your pizza. That would be more palatable for me. Instead, I just feel like I'm just like punched in the face like 3 different times.
Including the tip?
Sure, you could tip in advance.
Yeah, I would love that. I think it should all just be included in the price. Everything. Just put it all like.
It's not
in
like
one
I'm
number.
tipping him based on his performance. It's like, I assume that you drove here and did as best a job as possible. So whatever, when I order the pizza, is going to be the same rate I'm going to tip you when you arrive.
Sure.
Like, you're not dead. You didn't crash your car. You're going to get your 20%, I guess. Like, that's just how I roll.
Yeah.
But I'm not paying. I don't think this machine was up to snuff. I don't think this machine was like on its best behavior.
So are you going to leave a bad review based off this $1.25
No, I'm not a bad
console
review.
fee?
I don't like to do that kind of thing.
Will you stop going to the pizza place because of this fee?
No, I don't want to.
So what are you going to do? You're just going to complain?
I'm going to complain
about
about it on a podcast. I think that's the way to do it.
Right.
Or I just at the establishment on Twitter and complain that
to
way.
get your $1.25 back.
That seems to be.
It's such a minuscule amount that it sounds even honestly a little petty to mention, but it would bother plenty of people. It would probably bother me too. I guess I just don't know what to do about it. You know,
there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to accept it.
Just kind of slave to it.
I just was curious if you had ever encountered a console fee for.
I'm sure I've encountered numerous fees that I would question, but in the moment you're like so close to getting your pizza, you're like, here's $1.20, whatever. I'm sorry that happened to you.
It's okay, but I'll try and lift myself up before the end of this show.
The rule of the story: go get your own pizza.
Make your own pizza. You could do that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Tonight, the State Farm Center in Champaign, Illinois. Again, this is a venue that can hold over 15,000 people. They had about 2 for the show. And we start with highlights of Bryan Danielson beating Swerve at All In and the interference by Hangman Page being shown. But then a ominous theme begins. And the theme is called Not Wild Thing, as Jon Moxley makes his return for the first time since Forbidden Door. And this would be the latest example of a commercial song that AEW has dropped.
Yeah, and in this case, I mean, other than I guess maybe rights expiring, I wonder if it's supposed to signal something else, you know? Because for a heel,
Elton John was up about a year, and then I mean he's been using this for years at this point, but we still got the Pixies; they're still using that.
Well, they brought that back after
that's right after
Jane
the
expired.
That's true.
But I wonder if in this case it's maybe character driven, you know, just so you don't get that babyface pop. So we'll see.
So he comes out and Tony Schiavone runs to the ring, and this was not expected. This was not on the format sheet. He was not supposed to be here, and Tony is just how are you doing, buddy? And Jon Moxley was not in the buddy mood. He stated that he's been doing a lot of thinking and not a lot of talking these last 2 months, and he needs to get things done. And he came here looking for someone who isn't here. This was a bad plan.
Well, at least he gave the message.
Okay.
Nice.
Why did he need to? I was curious by this. It's like, I've come all the way here after 2 months away. I know this guy isn't here. And he's talking about Darby Allin.
Tickets were cheap.
Maybe. I guess
tickets were
just
cheaper in
Ohio
Champaign.
to Illinois, not the longest stretch of drive. So, I mean, this would have been something if he went all the way to England. It's like, I know the guy isn't here, but just wanted to say I'm looking for you. So he addresses Darby Allin, and he says, it's time to talk. I won't be hard to find.
Yeah. Very.
He would have been hard to find these last 2 months. No one knew where he was. And,
Okay,
and
well,
where's he going to be? How would Darby know where to find him?
Probably the next place that AEW does a show.
You think he'll be in Sioux Falls on Saturday night?
Maybe not Collision. I don't know if he's doing that. The next Dynamite, I'm betting he'll be there. Yeah.
So you think that Moxley is done, but then he comes back and he gets in Schiavone's face and just tells him, this isn't your company anymore, which was very cryptic. And yes, I had to look this up. I was like, what is the history between Jon Moxley and Darby Allin? And they have had 2 singles matches in AEW. Mm-hmm. Moxley has won them both. Their last match was in July of 2020.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, July of 2020, like deep into the pandemic.
This was right in the middle of the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I think the relationship on an AEW has always been as allies. You know, if maybe even almost like a sort of like older brother, little brother type of relationship. Even I don't think they've interacted much since then. So. The whatever this is, it's certainly
it's 2 originals as well, which seems to be something along the lines of this character shift for Moxley.
Yeah, it's just out of character, I guess you could say, for Jon Moxley, just given their both what we presume to be double babyface sort of allegiances. But this might be a very slow sign that this is not a babyface Jon Moxley. I found most interesting him talking to Tony Schiavone, saying this isn't your company anymore, and Tony Schiavone, he owns a lot of shit. Okay, like he certainly is the boss of many bosses, but I almost sense that I think he was more so speaking directly to Tony Khan, who Tony is very much an avatar for, one of many avatars Tony Khan has. But I am intrigued at what he's building here. It's very mysterious for the time being.
Well, there will be more of Jon Moxley, so we'll get to that later in the show. And the announcement.
By the way, Brian, thank you, Brian. It was the New Japan theme that Mox came out to, the Death Rider theme.
Renee is with the conglomeration, and Willow and Hook are there as well, and Briscoe just tees up the matches. Willow is going to have a Chicago street fight with Chris Statlander at All Out next weekend. And Briscoe just rallies everyone for Big Tom's match coming up next with Hangman Page. So this was quite the match to start things off, a near 17-minute match between Page and Ishii. And they start off just murdering one another with forearms, and neither lets up. And Page is absorbing all of these strikes. He stands up to the chops, but at the first half of this, it was like just really hard hitting, and it was a struggle to get this, like, any kind of reactions for this. But it took the tease of paralysis to get this crowd really excited. As we picked up, Ishii fired up from the corner. Like, his timing was so good in this match. Just drops him with one forearm. It's like these guys are just hitting everything precisely. It's like you would just think this exact same match would be tearing the house down in so many different places. But it was a struggle. And again, I don't want to like dump on this crowd. I think like just the structure of this building probably was they were fighting against that too. Like, it was just not a lot of people that were at this show. Page introduces several submissions, including a crossface, and they note the fact that he is introducing some new wrinkles. During one of the picture-in-pictures, Ishii is fighting to get to the rope to break the submission, and Taz laments having short legs like Tomohiro Ishii. And that prompts Taz to then talk about the size of his inseam, which is 22 inches. He discusses the size of his torso and that it's comparable to a man that is 6'6", and that he also walks around with a head that is too big.
Okay.
Yeah, we got this. This was a body by Taz, and Ishii stops.
Good for suplexing though.
Very, very much so. Yeah. Ishii stops a Deadeye. Brain buster gets blocked. My brain has been busted. And then a German, Page lands on his feet, and they're both like blocking each other's moves. And finally, Page hits a release German. The buckshot gets caught, and Ishii in a belly to back position with Page upside down. Ishii just sits out and drops Hangman. And I thought this guy was dead.
It was the Deadeye.
It was the Deadeye, but instead of going to his knees, he just sat. He came and sat down. Like, he didn't like tuck him. So
really?
It's like Hangman just going straight down into the mat. I had to watch this in slow motion, and like, it looked insane. And it did look like he angled himself, so his shoulder took a lot of this, which is still not the best way to be landing. But I mean, this crowd, this just took this 2,000 people, and they just lost it here. And Taz was just screaming at this move.
Well, the height difference is so makes this move so difficult. You know, like any sort of like tombstone variation. You know, having a taller person who's doing the move makes the move a lot safer. But man,
yeah, like he wasn't going down to his knees. He was going like ass down on this.
Oh, Page must have a lot of trust. It was a very scary looking move.
Yeah, like it made me think of like the Owen tombstone with Austin, where instead of going to his knees, he sat out, and it was just like, why would you do that with the like ass down. But anyway, this led to a near fall, and man, the crowd was really going here at this point forward for the final stretches here. They trade lariats. Page gets up, lands the discus, and then Ishii is staggering. He's like out on his feet. Page hits another lariat, a deadeye, and the buckshot to win at 16 minutes and 45 seconds. But a terrific match with a very scary deadeye from Tomohiro Ishii.
Yeah, honestly, I was watching this match and it wasn't necessarily jumping out to me like you would expect.
No, dude, it was so quiet for, I would say 70%, but their strikes were so heavy, and I'm just like, man, you would like this in a G1 setting would have just like torn the house down, I feel.
Well, it's exactly what I think they were trying for. I mean, it honestly, it's exactly what you'd expect out of a Tomohiro Ishii match, and it's guys hitting each other hard, maybe dropping each other on each other's heads, but maybe it's because without the crowd reaction, I kind of found it a bit old hat, and in fact I was almost a little bored by it just because I feel like I've seen this match so many times before. But maybe it was the soundtrack that really kind of like tells you how much atmosphere is necessary for matches like this.
Well, Swerve Strickland walks out, and there is Hangman. They go nose to nose, and he's pissed about Hangman getting involved at All In. But Swerve explains he feels sorry for Hangman because you're the one that has become the petulant little child, and you've been driven further and further away from success while I keep getting closer and closer. And even though I don't have this title belt, I will always be referred to as a world champion, and therefore you failed. And Page screams that you're not a champion. You're a piece of shit. You broke into my home, and you could never beat me on your own. The first time, Prince Nana helped. The second time, it took Prince Nana and Brian Cage. And then the third time, it went 30 minutes, and you're not as good as me. Now, for those keeping track, they have had 4 matches. Swerve is 3-1 in this series, so he's done very well in this.
What was the result of the other one?
He had the win at Wrestle Dream. He had a win on, I think it was a Dynamite, then the Texas Death Match, and then Hangman beat him in the last one earlier this year on TV.
Okay. Oh, and sorry, you're including the draw, right? The 30-minute draw. That's what Page mentioned here.
Which was the draw? Was that the one earlier this year, or was that one of the last one? Okay, so then they've had 4 matches.
Right. With Page winning one of them, right?
Page has won 1.
Okay.
We'll double check that of whichever one was the draw, because the Cage was involved in the Texas Death Match. That one I do remember.
I'll look it up just very quickly.
So he says that what upsets him is that at Revolution, when they were in the 3-way with Samoa Joe, that Page submitted, not because he was beat, but because he didn't want Swerve to win. And he tells this story that the day of Revolution, which was in Greensboro, he drove that morning to Hangman's house and watched Hangman outside taking his pregnant wife to the hospital as they were expecting their second child, and says that's who Hangman is supposed to be. But instead, you're focusing on this, and that's when Swerve decided he would focus on the title and not Hangman, basically stating that this is a family man that does not have his eye on the prize. And he states how Hangman failed at the Owen, failed in the Casino Gauntlet, led to his team losing at Blood and Guts because he's so focused on Swerve that his career is going up in flames. And what kind of man will you be in that cage match, which they have set up for All Out for these two to have next weekend? And what kind of man will you be for your kids? And Hangman just storms out, and that is our match for All Out, the cage.
Yes. Okay. So thanks to cage match here, we've actually had 3 singles matches. One of them was on the January 2023 edition of Dynamite, which was won by Swerve. We have, of course, the Texas Death Match, also won by Swerve. And then we have a 30-minute time limit draw, number 1 contenders match from February of this year.
Wasn't there a Wrestle Dream match?
Wrestle Dream was Swerve beating Page. That was one of the wins from Swerve.
I'm looking at 4 singles matches here.
You might be confusing with the Samoa Joe 3-way.
No. Wrestle Dream, Title Tuesday last October, where Swerve pinned him. Then Full Gear was the Texas Death Match. And then Dynamite earlier this year on February 7th.
And then Title Tuesday?
Is that listed? October 10th, 2023. I'm reading here. Swerve pinned Hangman Page.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I don't see it here, but...
Okay. Well, regardless. Okay. The last one was February 7th. That was the draw, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So there you have it, everyone. Their steel cage match will take place next Sunday at All Out. What do you think about the segment itself?
I love the segment, honestly. I think it's been really interesting seeing the way Swerve has been able to weave back and forth between playing a babyface for Blood and Guts to like a pretty menacing villain, throughout this Bryan Danielson feud. And then I think you're seeing back here reverting back to being, I would say, more of an anti-hero babyface, contrasting against Hangman Page here. He really is somebody who seemingly really, really understands the appeal of his character, and therefore is able to kind of take it into any direction depending on who he's feuding against. He's somebody who... I love the backstory that he weaved in here, taking us back to Revolution and retconning that sort of like period into telling us that he was about to commit another home invasion, and telling us that he stepped away from doing it because he learned to let go of vengeance and instead focus on his goals of winning the championship, which he achieved. So
it's great when home invaders can grow as people.
Yes, it absolutely is. But I mean, he still has that within him. Okay, he was about to home invade, but he had busier things to do, and
there's a second baby now too.
Okay, well, but he moved, didn't Page moved. He let us know, right? That's part of his frustration. He was forced to move as a result of all.
So he's in an undisclosed location.
Yeah, which I'm sure like Swerve will find out. He probably already knows. He probably is hanging out in front of his house right now. Anyway, but we need, like, it's nice to know that, hey, the edgy home invader is still inside waiting to come out. He just had busier things to do. But we love the home invader in Swerve. We want somebody who is that vicious, in our champions. And again, I think it's making for really great anti-hero stuff, and ties it back to their history really well. 3 or 4 matches, whatever, doesn't matter almost. I also love seeing Hangman Page here almost act kind of lost at the end of this segment. We remember, I think part of what
nothing Swerve said was incorrect.
No,
he just threw facts at him, and he
got into his head.
His career has gone up in flames. He's lost all these matches. He's been totally divorced from the title scene. Like, everything Swerve laid out here was true.
Was factual. Like, you get the sense Page at the end of this is thinking, is Swerve right? Is my time at the very top over, and I'm not supposed to be beating somebody like him? I should just stay at home and be a parent. And I thought Page showed that really well in just the way he froze up and decided to kind of walk to the back. It's almost like he's reignited that sort of like self-doubt and anxious cowboy that's within him. And already this feud, I think, is already so full of depth, and they did a great job of reigniting it all just in this little short segment.
And it's hard not to just draw the parallels that, like, with Hangman Page and this battle between his career and his family life, and what Swerve is coming off of with Bryan Danielson, that we'll get into in that promo. The other thing is that, like, would you assume that this winner of this cage match becomes the next title challenger for Wrestle Dream or a future title shot?
Well, what's up with Darby?
Darby has the Grand Slam match.
Oh, his is Grand Slam. Okay. Then...
because Tacoma is the next pay-per-view in Washington.
Sure. I don't think it's... I would say yes, except I don't know if they're going to go to a Swerve Swerve Danielson rematch that fast. And if not, then could it be Page and Danielson? I mean, I suppose it could be as well. Christian Cage is also around there, and they can also name another.
They have a lot of challengers.
They can just make another challenger like they did tonight, right? So I wouldn't say they have to do that, but they could. Yeah.
Jamie Hayter, her first match since May of last year, taking on Harley Cameron, and they showed the angle from Double or Nothing 2023, where it was the Outcasts that took her out. The Outcast contingent of Saraya, Ruby Soho, and Toni Storm. So Ruby Soho is pregnant. Toni Storm went dancing off into the night, and no one has heard from her since All In. So that leaves Saraya to be they're going to play out Kill Bill, and the only person left is Saraya.
I love this though. I love that they first of all managed to tell us exactly why Jamie Hayter has been out. Well, they didn't reveal. I guess they did in kayfabe at least reveal the reason that whatever the source of this injury is. But Toni Storm is really the one responsible. So they've already built in a program here for pre-timeless Toni Storm, and Jamie Hayter wanted to get revenge. So I mean that immediately puts her on a path with arguably the biggest star in the division at the moment in Toni Storm. So I'm looking forward to that.
It was a very short match, chance of welcome back, and Cameron tries a spot where she almost like the stratosphere, where she goes to kick off the top rope, but they had a stumble here, and Cameron is sent to the floor. Jamie Hayter stops Soul Food, hits her with 3 hate breakers, and the Haterade, how I've missed our hate-fueled finishing maneuvers, and wins in 3 minutes, 6 seconds, and Saraya sends Cameron into Hayter as the sacrificial lamb, and Saraya just runs through the crowd to escape Jamie's wrath.
Yeah, so I think Hayter looked pretty good for somebody who's been gone for so long. Her offense looked strong and as legitimate as it did before. Felt it was a pretty decent return, and of course, the most important thing is that it had a lot of build towards this future revenge match with Saraya. So I would have liked to have heard a promo from Jamie Hayter or an interview or something just to kind of boost that presence a little bit. Like this, revenge story, I think, needs to be hit a little bit harder through her voice and a sense of what her anger really is.
I agree. I do think you need that promo, which you could do at any of these upcoming shows. I would get to the Saraya match fairly quickly. I don't think it has to be held off too long, but I'm sure it'll be on one of these shows coming up. Renee speaks with the Learning Tree and Roderick Strong. They're in the All-Star 8-Man, and Renee mentions Big Bill's big reaction that he got, and boy, were they expecting that tonight in Champaign, Illinois, and this crowd did not follow the cue of Cardiff and London. But Jericho smiles and is asked about losing the title. Says it was a hard-fought match. The only reason Hook won was because he's finally learned the lessons that I taught him. And then Roderick brings up his history with Chris Jericho, also from May of 2023. But he's happy to be part of Jericho's Vortex for one night, and he wants his help getting Kyle O'Reilly away from Orange Cassidy. And Jericho notes that Cassidy still owes him $700 for ruining his jacket 3 years ago. So a lot of history brought up in these segments.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They recapped Ospreay's win over MJF and the return of Daniel Garcia. So out walks MJF, heavily selling the effects of the Tiger Driver with his neck taped. He states he's in tremendous pain.
Was it enough for you?
I mean, I was glad he didn't just walk out. But at the same time, by the end of this segment, like, it just felt like it's just another wrestling move. You know what I mean? It's like,
no, he did explain. Okay, he said he was in tremendous pain. He had a headache. Aside from having the tape, he had a headache, and he had 2 herniated discs. Is the knowledge of that sort of damage enough to, I guess, make the Tiger Driver 91 feel like the ultimate, career-ending type of finisher?
I will compare it to this, that we saw Daniel Garcia hit with that tombstone off the second turnbuckle, and he was gone for months. Mm-hmm. So I would say they've already established a move that in story is the more deadly here, that Garcia is coming after MJF for. Whereas MJF was back here 3 days later and is probably going to be imminently having a match with... Well, he is. He's having a match with Daniel Garcia next weekend.
That's sort of the problem with this 2-week turnaround. You can't really have a guy like MJF who is needed on a pay-per-view sell it for that long. And I mean, I kind of maintain that's sort of the problem with like a storyline like this, building up this Tiger Driver 91 to be as devastating as it was. It certainly made it tough for me to immerse myself in the story. But on the night, it worked, you know. And next time Will Ospreay pulls off the move, I think it'll still get a really big reaction. So maybe it's
headaches are terrible. Like, if you
Yeah.
ever have a bad headache, I mean, that's
Really
that's
bad
nothing to laugh at.
yeah, forget the herniated disc. It's the headache. Yeah.
So he explains he lost his ring, he lost his title, and he has 2 herniated discs in his spine. And he asks where all you people were for this. And the simple answer would be like, back in our country, like watching this. Like, what did you expect us to do as fans when you lost his title on the weekend? He is now denouncing his U.S. citizenship because of this. It's an awful country, except for Plainview, Long Island. And let's admit it, without MJF, this company is a circus. And Ospreay, a circus act. You cheated like a gutless worm. And this isn't over. And he warns Ospreay that one day you're going to be this close to winning the grandest prize in this sport. And when you are about to win it, I will be there to cut you off at the knees, which I think is a really a line to just kind of shelve, because I feel it's going to be like over like a year away and this is going to happen, and people are going to be confused as to there was no story here. Well, here was your story. They've told you flat out this guy's going to screw Will Ospreay at the most inopportune time, and it's going to be so far away that you will forget this promo.
Yeah. Whether or not it happens in a year or 5 years from now,
5 years,
whatever. Like, you know, you still want to lay the seed, because at some point we anticipate these two having another match. Yes.
Then he shifts focus to Daniel Garcia, who he calls a bum, and he starts screaming when Garcia jumps him from behind and puts him in a guillotine. And this is John Jones Lyoto Machida, because he's dangling and drops his lifeless body onto the floor. It was like for your wrestling comparison, this was a Hulk Hogan and Richard Belzer.
He did a actual Marcelo Garcia variation on the guillotine as well. So from one Garcia to another.
So he's out, and Garcia is going for the pile driver, but then stops, and he eyes the turnbuckle, and he's going to deliver the pile driver off the second turnbuckle when security arrives, and Garcia starts attacking them, and MJF, who is recovered from this debilitating guillotine, leaps to his feet and attacks Garcia, and Garcia tries for the pile driver again when Daniels and security are in, and Garcia gets the microphone, and he says, "I stole your ring, and I pawned it to fly to London."
Okay.
Does this make sense?
So I love the explanation, and somebody actually using the stolen ring just as an attribute to gain heat on MJF. I think he should have said, "I stole your ring so that I could pay for my flight." Maybe that's what he meant, you know, because the ring was stolen in London, right?
Yes.
So he would have had to steal it, fly back to Buffalo, pawn it, and then buy the
That was
ticket.
my... I mean, it's a small thing, but I was like, this made no sense. Like, we only know that the ring was stolen because MJF mentioned that it was stolen in London.
Maybe what he means is he paid for the money that he already spent by pawning the ring.
So
the fact.
maybe he got a one-way flight and he was broke. He couldn't get back home, so he stole the ring.
No.
pawned
He
it.
said round trip. He bought round trip tickets using this pawned ring.
But how did he get there to steal the ring?
This is the
And does Tony not fly his talent? Like,
this is the most weird. Well,
this
he
was his
wasn't booked-
story. I'm just trying to make sense of it.
No. He wasn't booked on the card, so he would have
Okay.
had to pay his own way.
So did he have to pay his way to Champaign as well?
Yes. Well, he drove for this one from
All right.
Buffalo, probably.
Okay. I'm just trying to put all this together.
Okay,
It was-
Jared, thank you very much. He bought the tickets on credit, but is paying off the bill with the ring. There, we got it.
Oh, okay. Well, there you have it. So glad he could
Plot hole filled. We got it.
obviously was not too concerned about any security footage at Wembley Stadium that would catch him stealing
He
a
just
ring.
admitted it, right?
Yeah.
Right here.
Just blatantly put a bullseye on.
Well, I mean, the other guy did try to cripple him. Okay, I think it's
Any defense attorney would salivate at that defense. Yeah,
yeah, it's sort of an eye for an eye.
got it. Well, Garcia, after
for a ring.
admitting to stealing the ring, reminds him that the worst thing that I've ever had to endure was my mother watching me wheeled out in my hometown, and I am obsessed with ruining your life, MJF. It's my fetish. His fetish. And
Which means he really, really wants it.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Well, we are going to get a fetish match at All Out. He's already spoken to Tony Khan. So he drove here, unbooked, but then spoke with Tony Khan, who didn't comp his trans, and he got a match for the pay-per-view. So this will all work out. He's going to get a great payoff at the pay-per-view, and the match is set, and he promises to break MJF's neck because a win will not be enough.
Listen, okay, we've established that this man has a fetish for all of this, so there are no lengths he wouldn't go to in order to get this match, okay? Stealing a ring, flying back to Buffalo, pawning it, buying tickets, and then flying back, that's come on. For a fetishist, that's hardly anything, right? I thought Garcia sounded great in this segment. You know, it was a level of anger and aggression that I don't think I've ever seen from him. Certainly, he hasn't had this level of storyline that's even necessitated it. But he showed, I would say, pretty like main event level type of like angry promo here. And it's about as far as you could get from sort of the dancing sports entertainer. So I think it's the type of progression he really needs at this point in his career. And whether or not it's true that he's signed yet, I mean, much like, you know, Zachary went on NXT, I mean, you can take a look at a promo like this and any appearance from Garcia from this point forward as some form of audition, because, you know, a lot of people will be watching.
Well, I just hope he gets a higher guarantee on his next contract.
Maybe, hopefully, flights next time. Yeah, maybe he earned some leverage with this promo.
The All-Star 8-man tag was next with Hook, Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Kyle O'Reilly against Roderick Strong, Chris Jericho, Big Bill, and Brian Keith. And all 8 are brawling away. Jericho had tagged out at the beginning to avoid Hook, and Cassidy breaks out of Jericho's full Nelson, getting his hands into the pockets, and we get a heat spot on Briscoe, heat spot on Kyle O'Reilly. Big Bill gets tagged in, and you could just see the way he came in, like in his mind, he was expecting like this crowd is just going to be continuing, and it quickly became apparent, no, this is, and I wouldn't have even doubted like in most other cities, but this was just not the night where anything was organically going to transfer over and to rely on that type of reaction.
Yeah, I do think though, whether or not the crowd was the crowd size was to blame, I do think it gives you pause about how much this reaction would have jumped over, right? Like,
and they were pushing, like the fact Renee brought it up, they were clearly pushing the audience to continue.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. At this point, it's like a week removed from it. Let's say next week. Well, when's the next time? Like, what will they ever get a crowd that
a big crowd again?
Enough? Well, what I mean is like just a vocal crowd. You know, like will that happen?
You know what will be because next week they're in Milwaukee, but you would think those 2 nights in Chicago next weekend, like those would be crowds that if they are going to.
Aren't we so close to Chicago already?
This is Champaign. This is Champaign. It's a different.
Okay.
It's just different.
Yeah, but like fine, but 2 weeks removed though, is that momentum still sort of there for Big Bill? You know, is the sort of like desire to mimic a Wembley crowd still going to be there?
It's fresh in people's memory. It doesn't. These reactions, it doesn't take a ton of people to start them and then others to just copycat. But yeah, it did kind of feel like it was a thing over in Europe, and I don't know if it's gonna.
So I do think that's not untrue, but I also think at this point they need to encourage it a bit more through action, you know, by having Big Bill do actual fan-friendly things. And I thought they crafted a little bit of a spot with him here with these sidewalk slams. And
that was great. The one on Orange with the multiple revolutions, like that was, you know, they give him, you know, good spots, especially with.
But was it enough? You know, I think it needs to be some sort of like character-driven thing as well.
Well, they continued to work on Kyle, and then Hook came in with the big T-bone onto Bill, and Kyle ends up shooting right into a knee from Brian Keith. So Jericho teases a dive, but just waves to the crowd. Hook T-bones him, and then Strong and Hook are left in the ring after multiple dives by everyone. Hook stops the end of Heartache and applies the red rum, and they go down to the mat, and Roderick Strong just so clearly hooks the bottom rope with his foot. But Aubrey Edwards is looking at their faces and doesn't see the foot. So Roderick taps, and then in a moment that was just pure comedy, Aubrey gets up and steps over the foot that is on the rope to signal to the timekeeper to ring the bell. She literally gets up and steps over this foot. If you could go back and watch this, it is the most comical referee spot you could imagine. I thought this was just so ridiculous, and the submission was made. I mean, this was like the silliest ref spot I've seen in AEW in some time. It's covering some ground.
I didn't have that reaction to it, John, personally. Okay,
if you played this way and just watched how she had to like extend her leg to step over this, it was so ridiculous.
Okay, that is probably something that they should have cut out. But I can also buy a referee being so like, laser focused on calling a result, especially if it's a tap out, and just wanting to look at the the bell ringer right away to call the match. Who knows? Maybe she thought he got his leg up after the tap out. Does the tap out take precedence over having a late foot on the rope? Anyway,
I understand. This must have been hard to catch from this angle.
Sure. I don't dislike the finish because it's a great way of quickly building to a rematch between these two, at 2 weeks from now for the championship. Could it have been executed better? Yes, probably.
That we can agree on. Taven and Bennett run in. They attack. They join Roderick in attacking Hook, and then Roderick poses with the FTW title. So, I mean, that was the thing on this show. You had to shoot a lot of angles. So even if we didn't get match announcements, by the end of this show, we have a good idea of, I would say, like 70% of the card for All Out of where they're going. And this being likely our next direction for Hook and Roderick Strong.
Yeah. So the FTW title lives, and I'm sure the match should be good.
Don't insult that title.
No. John Cena suggesting for just the big bill, big story, I suppose, to do it in Grand Slam, which is taking place in his home borough of Queens.
Well, that's nice, but you need some momentum to go into that. I don't think you can just snap your fingers and get that reaction. So
they got a month.
You want to build towards that, and yeah, that would be a great place to do something with him. If you want to do something with him, like what is him going babyface? Like, is there a great demand for a singles babyface big bill run versus this lackey of Jericho?
To the fans in the UK, yes. Again, is that demand moving its way over?
Do you want a Jericho big bill feud? Is that what you're looking for?
Well, that's inevitable, right? Anybody that Jericho puts into the vortex is eventually going to feud with him.
Mercedes Moné hosted the most depressing party that you have ever seen. We are in the back room, and dude, she invited like 4 people to this party.
Can you name one professional wrestling backstage party that actually feels like a good party?
Some of those 4th of July cookouts that they had on WWE, the one where Owens took was it a pie in the face or something? That seemed like a fun
looked
party.
Like a better party than this one. They all looked about the same, with about.
Dude, when NXT does these segments, I like that. Like they fill them with all the people. This was just sad. This visual was just sad. This was like no one showed up except for this woman in the back next to Camille.
The party probably hasn't started yet. Everybody's busy working. Okay, the party starts at 10:10 p.m. Okay, after Bryan Danielson exits the ring.
Okay, well, here we are at the party, and Private Party walk in, which was appropriate. Maybe this was a private party. 3 people. And mentions the fact that you're facing Momo Watanabe on Friday. And Mercedes is like, yeah. So that was our promotion for Capital Collision. Cassidy then starts hitting on Mercedes, and Okada steps in, and Mercedes asks Okada how to say bye bitch in Japanese. And she is told, sayonara, bitches. And they said sayonara. They left, and then Okada danced with Moné for the 4 guests.
Yeah, he said it was his dream come true, which
Okada saved what was just to me a dreadful backstage segment.
And I like this segment too, man. Shit, maybe maybe this is.
Can you imagine this segment without Okada? If this had just ended with Mercedes saying "Sayonara, bitches."
So
I guess you needed the translator, so he needed to be here.
So no doubt Okada stole the show, stole the scene again, as he.
That girl in the background. I mean, she was number 2.
You really like this? Whoever this was in the match,
the blonde one, not the brunette. She did not carry her weight in the foreground there.
Gotcha. But I thought this was actually really good, or at least the beginnings of something that could be really good for Private Party. On Reddit today, there was like a thread that was up there of somebody asking when they're going to push Private Party. And my thought was probably never by this point. Okay,
dude, Okada is going to beat Cassidy on like Rampage, if not Collision this week, and I think that will be the end of this.
I don't doubt that possibility, but I actually thought Zay sounded awesome here. Okay, hitting on Mercedes Moné, he sounded very natural, very charismatic in doing it. I would love to see Private Party continue to be continue to just sort of orbit around Mercedes Moné. As these nerds trying to break into her inner circle. We know they have like a real life connection through Amazing Red. And I do think like this is potentially a chance for Private Party to just kind of find their fit, on Dynamite and in a consistent storyline. They could be like lackeys almost in ways that Camille can't necessarily fulfill. I'm not saying, have like them just get jobbed out, but I just want a consistent role for them and consistent speaking roles for Private Party. And it's been years at this point that they've, whether it be through injury or just through whatever reason, they've not managed to find their fit.
We have a story also up on the site. Mercedes has launched her own newsletter for her fans. This is called, they actually stated in this, they want it to be referred to as the Money Mag. And it's like...
The Money Mag?
The Money Mag. And she talks like out of character about like her match with Britt Baker and stuff like that. So anyway, there's a excerpt on the site if you want to check that out. Like she acknowledges like the lack of reaction for the match, and she would have like ideally liked to have changed some things that she wasn't going to share, but noted like it was late in the show, the crowd was like obviously more tired. She watched it back, like you could tell like she had a similar opinion, I think, to many about the match. So it's just interesting to get that immediate perspective on a match. Tony Schiavone says it's time for another celebration. I was like, man, are we spoiled? Let's bring on the next celebration. And out comes Mariah May in a robe, and Tony is so nervous next to her. May says her celebration has been postponed because she's not doing it in this town. She says, it might be called Champaign, but it should be called flat, stale, piss warm beer. Which is actually the nickname, I think, that locals refer to it as. And she insults the desperately average-looking women in the crowd who need some glamour, and then she takes off her robe, and she's in lingerie, revealing her championship, and walks out.
Good, like, heel personality stuff. She's dialing up the sex appeal. I think she cut a good insulting promo on the Champaign crowd. I don't sense she's going to have a match at All Out, because I think if she was, we would have probably heard about it on this show.
She can do her celebration at All Out.
Wasn't this a celebration already?
No, she said the celebration is being postponed.
Oh, this is just her like showing off her lingerie.
Yes.
Gotcha.
This was a prelude to the celebration.
Okay, well then sure, maybe a pay-per-view celebration then. Otherwise, I think like for a first appearance, this was good. Getting to speak is a lot more important than like, having a wrestling match, for instance, especially after winning a championship.
Yeah. This was another segment that I just thought like did struggle with like a lack of crowd reaction. But that was like everything on it was a lot of this show that I'm not going to necessarily pinpoint it on like one performer or one match, because to me it was a consistency throughout most of the show as well. Then this was very bizarre. We go to GYV from Sunday backstage, and the Young Bucks approach them, and they're trying to kiss up to GYV, noting we both have young in our names, and Zach Gibson calls them dweebs, and their message was for the entire tag division, and they are here to stay in AEW. We're coming for those titles, And James Drake says, when you see us coming, grit your teeth. And as they walk off, Matt, under his breath, calls them pricks. Then we go to another promo from GYV. This is from earlier today at Dynamite. And they state that we will be in action Friday on Rampage against one unlucky team that will find out firsthand what our intentions are. And James Drake says, whoever that team is, grit your teeth. Oh, okay. So we're going to have a mystery team taking on GYV on Friday. Unfortunately, as they're announcing this, there's a graphic on the screen that reads GYV versus the Outrunners. So someone did not get the memo here that this was not going to be a mystery team on Friday, but that's how they cut their promo, probably not knowing who their opponents were going to be when they cut this promo. This was our tribute to WCW segment.
Yeah, I would say this was unfortunately production that definitely harmed all of this. I thought the Bucks interaction was fine, and that's all that their appearance
then we
needed
cut
to be.
from GYV to GYV. It was like,
Yes. At the very least, like maybe separate the segments and put this on later on in the show. But to cut from them talking to them talking and this James Drake delivering the same line at the end of both segments was way too much. I can only grit my teeth so much. James Drake,
literally all we needed was this graphic to be shown during the next match. Like, we didn't need this promo to accompany it. We heard from GYV, and the Outrunners do not require a promo setup.
This is actually turning people off from watching Rampage. They should have not announced this and just kept it a mystery. But yeah, like I think production did them dirty. Just because they flew into Champaign doesn't mean you have to use them for one of these segments, especially if you already shot something at Wembley. So, but I mean, they're going to be on Rampage anyway, so they were being used. So yeah, this was totally unnecessary.
What was the bigger ball drop?
What would have been better though, John, is if we cut from this to another GYV promo.
Pushing toothpaste. Grit your teeth.
Yeah.
We're going to be on Collision against another team after we have beaten the Outrunners. We're going to be taking on any team that is willing to step up to us.
This should be their new gimmick, just like throwing to each other's promos.
What's more surprising, that they had these two GYV promos and blew this, or that days after this gigantic reunion, we didn't get one promo with a Champagne Supernova reference?
You know what? Maybe
they blew it.
New gimmick for these two. Yeah.
Noam Dar would have been on top of that one if he was on Dynamite.
Very true. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Then we go to GYV. No. Then my eyes were deceiving me after those last two segments, because then I saw Konosuke Takeshita and I was hearing Walker Stewart. And we got the unlocked fortress of the G1 Climax review of Takeshita's run over the past month. I was like,
it's canon now.
It's now happened. He participated in the G1, and they had a nice package here edited, and all of this to announce that he'll be on Rampage Friday in a 4-way match with Leo Rush, Beast Mortos, and Commander, which sounds like an excellent match for Rampage.
It looks like a great match for Rampage. And that's great. We could always use great Konosuke Takeshita matches, but it's gonna not advance his rank in any way. I mean, I'm assuming he wins, but win or lose, I don't. Well, certainly if he loses, that would be a bad sign. But I think at this point he doesn't need hot matches on Rampage. He needs story. He needs a chance to communicate. And he needs to do it on the big shows, whether it be Dynamite or even to start off on Collision. So maybe he's got nothing for this particular cycle, and that's fine. But I do think sooner or later he needs something that's a bit more, I would say, bigger, within the AEW landscape than just having another hot match on Rampage.
And then it was time for Ricochet's AEW in-ring debut. He comes out with the slogan "Out of This World" for his match against Kyle Fletcher. Excalibur is going over all of his history in PWG, being a 2-time BOLA winner, and Don Callis is on commentary for the match, and this match had some interesting stuff in it. Early on, Ricochet is doing all of his kip-ups, head scissors, and they're just going at a crazy pace. Ricochet leaps off the guardrail with a Meteora, and while on the ground, starts doing the suck it to the camera. And Taz says that moment is going to be a gif or a gif, whichever it is. What is it, a gif? And Excalibur explains it's a graphics interchange format. Right. And Taz's response was, nerd alert.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was contained to picture-in-picture.
Yeah.
Fletcher stops a recoil, and Ricochet hits a springboard clothesline, and the crowd is chanting for Ricochet. There's a lariat by Fletcher, and then Ricochet dives, like using his shoulder to connect. And then, after surviving a running boot and brainbuster, Ricochet lands with a knee strike, hits a DVD, and then Vertigo, the reverse Bloody Sunday, essentially, that I guess he's using as his finisher, because he beats Fletcher clean with the move in 12 minutes and 3 seconds. And afterward, either these two guys were just going overtime to sell the pace of which they were, or these two were so blown up because they looked just like on the brink of death after this match. And I'm curious your thoughts on this match. Like, technically fine, but man, it was not like this was the crowd for it, that you felt like you were watching like one of these, like, just like the in-ring is going to be the biggest selling feature of Ricochet, and I just didn't feel this came across in that sense, although I think the crowd affected that. But what did you think about night one for Ricochet?
Yeah, I think in maybe talking about this entire show, the crowd is always going to be a bit of an X factor. You know, we ask if it was a larger attendance or at least like a smaller building, would all of these matches have turned out differently? We have no idea, but so we can only talk about how we feel after tonight's presentation. I don't think Ricochet looked special and fresh enough. I think it'd be one thing if this was a short match that was kind of contained to like his high spots, but by going as long as they did, 2 commercial breaks. How long was the match done? Do you have the time? 12 minutes. Okay, well, it felt long with 2 commercial breaks in there. I kind of felt they wore off the freshness of seeing Ricochet in a new environment pretty quickly here. And I would also say I didn't sense that there were enough new wrinkles in his game to keep the freshness there. It quickly for me just kind of started to feel like another match on Raw, and I think that's the worst thing that can happen, you know, for a debuting new wrestler. Now, depending on the feuds that he's going to have, that can totally change things. You know, Mercedes Moné didn't necessarily start at the best, and this is better than the way Mercedes Moné started. But I was just kind of a bit startled at like how normal Ricochet felt in AEW for me this quickly.
I can see that. Yeah, I don't want to like rag on it, but you're bringing him in as like the equal to Will Ospreay. Like, that's essentially how you are packaging Ricochet, is like this long-standing series of matches. They're going to rekindle this feud. These are 2 of the best wrestlers in the world. So Ricochet needs to come across as at least equal to Will Ospreay, which is an incredible task to maintain. But I think you had to come out and just wow people. And I don't know if this was going to wow you, even though you had the opponent to do so in Kyle Fletcher. But I felt at the end of this, like, similar to you. And then afterward, again, these two are just like, you have to watch this. They just seem totally out of gas at the end of this. And Will Ospreay's music plays, and like, it's a fine reaction, but again, like, it was like, again, just imagine the pop in so many other places that this would have generated.
Well, Wembley, especially.
Like, I totally think it's hindsight, but
yeah, I get why they didn't do it. You know, it just, the timing wasn't there. It was just like a big show already, and they wanted to save a special moment for TV. Unfortunately, it didn't feel that special in front of this crowd.
So he walks out, and he's about to address Ricochet when all of a sudden he is hit from behind by a drive-by Poison Rana. This can happen in the streets, folks. You always got to be having eyes in the back of your head. And he just launched him onto the stage with this Poison Rana and tells Will not to forget about the bastard, welcomes his former Dragon Gate colleague Ricochet to AEW, but you got to get to the back of the line, and Ospreay belongs to me. And Ricochet comes up, checks on Will, And Ricochet yells to the back about, you want to come for me? And so I like the fact that they tease this, but they're not giving it away immediately. And it's like, maybe this is like your Arthur Ashe Stadium one. If you're going that early, maybe they're going to hold it off longer. But I like the fact that they dangled it and then they pulled it away from you.
Yeah. I mean, we have the pack match, that should be top of mind, and any sort of like teasing of Ospreay versus Ricochet would really kind of like be ignoring Pac. So I'm glad they're using this to actually bring Pac top of mind for a lot of us. But this is clearly the long term direction, and we'll see exactly how long term that is. Maybe
these two team first.
Yeah,
and then you know the match is coming, but maybe you get like a couple, Rico sprays.
Rico sprays.
No, not quite.
Yeah. Ashe? No.
Moxley is confronted by the cameraman, who's I don't know, like our TMZ camera here. Hey, Mox, what's going on, man? And Moxley has a message, and he spots these two security members who are just hanging out, doing nothing. And all of a sudden, a woman attacks them. And this is not one of the women from Mercedes party. This is a new woman who attacks them, throws security around, and then identifies when she turns around. And it is Marina Shafir, who looks to be paired with Moxley, who, I mean, Moxley has always spoken very highly of. And this does feel like at least a fracturing of his BCC allegiances, that you're going to see these two together. And that was our segment.
Always hard to tell with the BCC, just given like varying babyface heel identities, even within the group members themselves at times. So we don't know if this means Marina Shafir is in the BCC. I think it's actually something Moxley has spoken about wanting before, is Marina Shafir in there. Or could this mean Moxley not being in the BCC and starting something off with Marina Shafir? Either way, it seems like Mox is getting what he's kind of championed for in interviews and stuff for quite a while. And that's having Marina Shafir at least be pushed as this sort of like BCC style fighter. Taking advantage of, I think, the great character that she's crafted within Bloodsport that has never been fully taken advantage of on AEW TV yet. I certainly think this is a pairing that makes a bit more sense than Nyla Rose, for instance, for Shafir. And it'll be interesting to see like exactly how much of a managerial type of role Moxley plays coming off of this, So babyface or heel is the other question. Are these two heels? Or are they baby faces that beat up security guards?
How did you like overall, like Moxley's reintroduction? Are you intrigued by this?
I'm intrigued, yeah. I mean, I think right now, because we don't know if it's a babyface or heel introduction, I think so much of it we can't really say. But at least in establishing mystery, I think he's done a good job. Yeah.
Final segment, Bryan Danielson comes out with the AEW championship, and he states how he got backstage after the match, and Birdie told him it was the best day of her life. Now he adds the fact that she also got to ride a Peppa Pig double-decker bus earlier in the day, so that was part of the day too.
That sounds amazing. Wow.
That would have been fun. He said he knew immediately it was the favorite moment of his entire career, which he had stated at the press conference. His contract expired August 1st. He needs neck surgery, and his family is ready for him to come home. And I've done a lot of thinking since Sunday. And when I came to AEW, I thank the people that started this company, because this place is awesome. It's made pro wrestling better. It's made my life better. And I've realized that with the people who have fought for this title, the people who will fight for this title, it's probably time for me to go home. But not yet. And I will not retire as AEW champion. I'm going to fight for this title as much as I possibly can. And when I lose, my full-time career will be over. But I've still got a lot of heads to kick in. And he's issuing an open challenge for All Out in Chicago, because he is here to be the best AEW champion ever. So before we get the answer to the challenge, what do you think about the direction that they're going with Danielson, and how this was set up?
Yeah, I think about it as what we'd expect, I think he kind of doubled down on the idea that him losing the championship will be the end of his full-time career. So he is moving on to a part-time career after that. So you don't have to be that sad whenever he loses. Yeah.
I think it's just like it's a simple and really effective tool that hasn't been utilized in that way. Like every one of his title matches has an added level of importance now because you just don't know when he's going to lose. Like it could be some big show. It might be. You just don't know. Like I think his title matches all take on like that much more importance now during however long this run goes. And then Jack Perry appears on the screen explaining that no one wanted me to come back here, including you. I thought he was going to mention a disciplinary committee member, Bryan Danielson. He says, no one believed in me.
I think that's what he's referencing.
Well, it was. He just didn't flat out name drop the disciplinary committee. But he had to make a path for himself back to this company. He did so by punching Tony Khan. He buried Darby Allin at All In, and he beat Bryan Danielson at Anarchy in the Arena after I had been lit on fire. And I will retire you and because my future is being AEW champion. Your future is behind you. And then Perry is in the ring to jump Danielson, hits him with the running knee strike, and Perry holds up both titles. And that's how we ended the show with Bryan Danielson and Jack Perry for All Out. And I mean, you can question the opponents that they are lining up for Danielson, but there are storyline attachments with these losses. The one he had to Christian months ago and to Jack Perry back at Double or Nothing.
I like the choice of opponent here. I think much of what Danielson should be doing in these last few months is to provide value and provide big spotlight for the future. And, Perry is one of your future guys. And I don't anticipate Perry beating Ryan at all, but to have a potential main event spot for a pay-per-view headlined by Jack Perry, I think is good exposure for Perry. Whether or not people will consider it a real main event, I think might be another thing. But, it adds a level of importance for a Jack Perry big singles match. So I think it's a good first choice for a title defense for Bryan.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it a lot clearer, as we had spoken about on Sunday, like putting Jack Perry over so strongly over Darby Allin. That does make a lot of sense. And you can, I mean, I think it's going to be a tough sell of Jack Perry, but I mean, here's a guy that, like, if he were to win the title and you've got Darby that gets the title shot against the winner, that's tied into it too. Like, you should have Darby somehow, speaking over this next week about how he gets the winner here, and he's also tied to Moxley now. There's some interest, but I would say as a headliner, it's putting a lot on a Jack Perry to be in a main event position on a pay-per-view coming 2 weeks after the big show, but they are, trying to elevate Perry in this pairing.
The more you put him in that main event spotlight, I think the more the audience might start to see him as a permanent mainstay there. And thank you, Nathan Dewey, for bringing up the Chicago reaction for Jack Perry. I believe last time he wrestled in Chicago was for that New Japan show, and it was nuclear in that building for him. So, I think they'll be fanning some of those CM Punk flames for Jack Perry in the buildup of this as well. The atmosphere could be very, very special for this one.
In fairness, Danielson did recommend they not keep Punk either.
Well, we don't have to reference that.
Okay. Well, there you have it, everyone. That was Dynamite. I would say, like, I thought it was a very good show, but I can't get over the atmosphere. This was a really it affected the show a lot, and this was like a big show coming off All In. You did a ton of angles, several returns. You were building up big matches. There's a tease of like Ospreay, Ricochet, tons of stuff. But I just didn't feel a lot of this landed, and it was I looked a lot at like just this gigantic building that they were in. But I mean, it was also like, the fact is, like, this was not a show that moved a whole lot of tickets, even though they did, they were around 1,000, as I mentioned, like 10 days ago. So at least they got up to 2, but you're still talking like a very low figure.
As a show that had to play bridge for all the big sort of storyline events coming out of All In into a quick 10-day turnaround build for All Out, I think they did really well with this show. You can already tell like what majority, or at least like a lot of the big matches on that card is going to be, and I think they're establishing like good story to lead into all of them as well, good justification to lead into all of them. I'm realizing in speaking about the show that I think a lot of my disappointments with it might be in-ring related, and thinking about the crowd, thinking about the reactions, I do think that's probably the crucial missing element that, Ricochet versus Kyle Fletcher probably needed. That, to me, a Tomohiro Ishii versus Adam Page needed. Jamie Hayter, her match was kept relatively short, so I don't think she suffered from it so much, but I definitely think in the case of the other two, they could have really benefited from louder crowd reactions tonight.
All right. Those were our thoughts on Dynamite, and we'll send it over to you. You can send in your super chats, and we'll be going to a number of pieces of feedback on the forum. Let's
go to Justin House, who sends a super chat $5 to say future pizza fees. I hope we get Bryan and Nigel in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, there's no shortage of potential opponents that you can go with Bryan, but it's all in where they want this to ultimately peak with, and how long they extend this for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for those what did they call them, incom fees, John?
I can't remember. Yes.
Okay, well there's some of that provided by Justin here.
Let's go to Mr. Kane on the forum. He says, welcome back, Moxley. I like that he's paired with Marina Shafir. She's incredibly underrated. This association will boost her up. What a weak crowd for Danielson. What a weak crowd for a post-pay-per-view show. He deserved better in regards to Danielson. I'm looking forward to seeing how he and Jack Perry mix in the ring, hopefully highlighting Perry's technical aspect. I don't think Jack Perry retires Danielson, though. All signs point to Hayter and Saraya for All Out, so that's nice. Hayter needs the slow rollout, and Saraya will play the role well. The Moné party was underwhelming. It should have been a running segment throughout the show. We should have had multiple cut-in. Folks, it's wild back here. We can't even keep ourselves straight here with how much partying is going on here. Okay, he goes on. He's booking a better party here with multiple cameos from various members of the female roster. And finally, Takeshita got a G1 video package just to be put back on Rampage. There you have it.
Well, you got to build your way back up, okay? Make it to the G1 quarterfinals, Rampage, then maybe Collision, and then Dynamite. That's the path. Let's go to Curtis from the 519. That first hour of Dynamite absolutely flew by tonight. Great to see Mox back in AEW with a new and fresh feel to his character. Everyone seems to be speculating that his promo is suggesting a Shane McMahon debut, but surely they're being irrational, right? Interesting. Okay, what do you think of that? Mox with Shane McMahon just does not feel like anything I would have ever thought about. Like, what's that association? Well, the WWE. But he's so anti-WWE. Yeah. I can't really see it. I don't know if the audience would be into it.
They would that first night. That place will erupt. Even Champaign would erupt if Shane McMahon walks out there. But by week 6, I don't know. I'm not very high on any of the Shane McMahon stuff. You'll have a lot of people just look at, hey, listen to the reaction he gets coming out, and I just think over time, I just think it's more of a net negative to have Shane McMahon involved in your product in any way.
Says overall this show was a thumbs up, a great main event match and closing segment, and the only real downside I thought was the Mariah May promo. It felt a little directionless and flat, but she has so much natural charisma and talent. I have no worries about her reign. Question: what are your thoughts on Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling? Seems like they're bringing in a lot of ROH and AEW talent. Do you think there could be some sort of partner indie promotion for AEW to work with and get guys extra reps and eventually lead to a D'Amore partnership? Maybe running ROH or having a hand in AEW proper.
I think that's really getting ahead of things. I mean, if there was interest in using a Scott D'Amore, I think that, well, first of all, we don't know when his I guess non-compete is up with Anthem that he had mentioned. Obviously, he can go ahead with this Maple Leaf Pro. I mean, for AEW, it's like I don't think you there's no shortage of partnerships that they have that they can send their talent out to. Like if you're just looking for reps, I mean, you have affiliations with all of these different companies. Yeah, you can add another one to the mix. I would say for this show, it looks like it's really well funded because they're bringing in a lot of big names. It's going to air on Triller, and as of now, it's just these 2 shows. And I mean, I just don't know what the plan would be for another wrestling company in 2024/25, like that doesn't have TV, that I think would be like, who is the audience that you're going after here? Like, is this like, you're talking, I think, a lot of hours of content already, and you're putting together another, like, heavy wrestling heavy promotion that has some names attached to it. And obviously you have, the ability to book a Konosuke Takeshita and an Athena. But
well, I think in the Southern Ontario market, there's going to be people that want to see your AEW and TNA and ROH stars beyond just whenever they come to town, and I think that's what it's trying to fill. Like a sort of upper level indie that has access to those talents and might run your local venues that much more. I mean, this is probably, going to be a much more expensive show than, we don't know. We don't know what their typical sort of like range of star power is. But I mean, I get the sense right now they're doing a lot of this loading up just to kind of make a name for their first few shows.
Like they've hired Mauro Ranallo to do their commentary.
Yeah,
like
that's pretty big.
Like just like a flight for your commentator from LA. I mean, like they are not sparing any expenses on this show. And it's, I'm curious to see like what the interest is. Like they're running St. Clair College, which TNA has done many times. It's D'Amour's hometown. It's just like, I don't know what the end goal is. I haven't talked to Scott about it. So I don't know what the overall plans are beyond these 2 nights of shows that they're broadcasting.
Well, it's establishing a brand, and if you get a big enough brand, I mean, hopefully the audience will follow, and maybe future partnerships will follow. But they're certainly making a big effort to make some waves.
All right. Next up is Cody from Maine, a mixed bag for tonight's Dynamite. I don't think anything was particularly bad, but not everything seemed to click. I still enjoyed it overall, primarily off the back of Moxley's return and the Swerve Hangman promo. I really enjoyed that AEW has treated that match type as a big deal, and hopefully they avoid the escape element of the match and just have it pin or submission to win. It should be a great conclusion to their excellent feud. One of the best, if not one of the best in not just AEW's history, but recent wrestling history in general. Overall, while the timing of All Out is a bit awkward, it's lining up to be a great card with matches on top that don't feel thrown together at the last minute. It's become a bit more difficult to justify spending $50 every month as opposed to 4 or 5 times a year on pay-per-views, but this card is shaping up to be one that I don't plan on missing.
Should have got the package on Fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's... Listen, they could not have, I think, presented a better show on Sunday in terms of just recapturing, people. Like if you were someone that has not bought a AEW pay-per-view in a while and you bought that one, I could see like a lot of momentum coming out of that show for tonight's show with the follow-up with Danielson and having that interest in the pay-per-view. But it's a different obstacle than just having your streaming deal and coming back 2 weeks later with a major show. So that's they felt like doing it again after last year, so that tells you like they were comfortable doing this again. Yeah,
they're probably like seeing a pretty good gate through live attendance, and I also think they're trying to establish the rhythm so that if they do move to a streaming deal, you have this sort of established pattern. And obviously the shows are probably profitable enough just with whatever they do. Let's go to Muggin, who says a decent Fallout episode that quickly filled up All Out. Bryan's world title run has an exit strategy in place by having the run he knows he can have, and he'll put someone over on his way out. Hangman Ishii was physical, and I don't know how he and Swerve are going to outdo the deranged violence of their Texas death, but they could damn sure try. Moxley's return and potential heel turn with Marina Shafir is intriguing as a stopgap for Darby on his path to Arthur Ashe. The MJF Garcia segment was very good, and I hope they go all the way with DG, despite the impending free agency hanging over his head. Did the Tiger Driver 91 get diminished because Max was able to walk? We kind of talked about that. Can we get Okada a match for All Out, Tony Khan? That pre-tape with Moné? I don't know if he's suggesting Okada and Moné in a match together. Maybe not. I don't know.
Sure.
Against Private Party.
Okay, sure.
I'd love that. That'd be a great match, I'm sure.
Brian in New Jersey. I wish the crowd was bigger in flat, stale, piss-warm beer, Illinois, but I thought it was a strong episode to follow up All In and segue to All Out with some fresh matches. Nice trajectory of things, especially Jack Perry coming in as Danielson's first challenger. Hit high Scoville level for MJF and Daniel Garcia. 4 matches that all delivered in their own ways. Hangman and Ishii was a hoss war I didn't expect. I thought Jamie Hayter looked fantastic with none of the ring rust I've seen from Mercedes and Britt Baker in their matches this year. I think Ricochet is going to fit like a glove, like the ones he wears now in his matches, with potential matches lined up with Ospreay and Pac. I wish Takeshita's first match back was something more significant, but that looks like a heck of a 4-way for Rampage.
Let's go up next to...
Do one more.
Brian, I'm just having a chat here. Matthew from Nashville, Tennessee. I hope the weather hasn't been too bad in the 6 because it's been miserable here. Daytime highs of 100 degrees with the real feel of 110. I don't know Fahrenheit, but that sounds really hot. Also, in the U.S., card fees are very common in small businesses because of the fees involved in the merchant running the card. When I renew my vehicle's registration, it's usually a few bucks extra to pay with a card. So,
okay. What if it's a big chain across the country?
Well, I mean, they need to pay their fees too, I guess. Okay. I thought the Danielson promo tonight was awesome. It took the crowd on a ride and had a pleasing ending. Then Jack Perry answered the open challenge. Really? Jack Perry? This dude is so bland. His heat is based off of a backstage incident from a year ago that the company needs to move on from. I'm sure he's a fine guy, but this gimmick sucks and does nothing for this viewer. I also don't see how anyone is going to buy this pay-per-view thinking Jack Perry is winning the belt. Could this be Tony trying to make good on him for the suspension? Moxley says, it's not your company anymore. Could he be alluding to Shane McMahon? Okay, yeah. Not talking about the Shane McMahon thing, but like, whatever people might think like was the relationship between Tony Khan and Jack Perry, the fact is he really wants Jack Perry to succeed now. He's invested a lot in Jack Perry, and he's investing a lot in Jack Perry. I don't think it's meant to be a make good. I think it's meant to make Tony Khan money because this is one of his guys that's on contract for him, and he thinks that he can make some money with him. So I think that's that.
Yeah, I mean, he's going very hard with him. He put him over Darby, and now he's headlining a pay-per-view. Like it's a big position to be in. We'll see. They have. They only have a week to build it, and they're obviously, I think that they're hoping that there's a bit of a halo effect from this all-in pay-per-view, and second, that it's not just a title defense, but like the idea that every Danielson match could be his last, but that is going to be a tough sell for people 2 weeks after the fact.
Yeah, I think it would have been with anybody, though.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks everyone for the feedback tonight and tuning in to the show. As we mentioned, we're back on Thursday with the Ask Away Mailbag Show. You can sign up $6 a month at postwrestlingcafe.com. Get all of our extra audio shows, including the Mailbag Show, and you can submit questions forum.postwrestling.com in the Ask Away Mailbag thread, or submit an audio question at memo.fm/postwrestling. Free to submit, and then all the other regular shows coming your way. Cafe members get Rewind to SmackDown and Collision Course in the coming days, and then Way will be live after Bash in Berlin with Neil Flanagan and Andrew Thompson, Braden Harrington, Sunday night after No Mercy. So that is going to wrap things up for us. Thank you for watching Rewind to Dynamite.